Welcome back to another video, guys. So today we're just doing a little bit of a leg day review. Lifts I've been doing, some things I think about while I'm doing it in order to drive more efficient stimulus to the muscles. And so, and a couple little nerd stuff just for my nerds out there that want to like to know more, but it'll make sense as to why I do the things that I do. So without further ado, let's get right into it. First, my current block of leg training, I'm not doing it's pretty much all machines at this point. I'm just so burnt out on back squats, big compound lifts that where I have to also stabilize everything and not drive maximum output into a particular lift. Especially, my goal is to gain muscle, and that's it. It's not strength anymore. I've got plenty of that. So for me, I'm just trying to drive the maximum amount of stimulus I can for muscle growth. So first, let's go look at hack squats. So I enjoy hack squats. However, I have noticed recently that I am not getting quite the amount of quad pump as I do on other lifts. And I know, there's a lot of talk out there about, pumps not being, a primary driver of, hypertrophy. And I get that. But in my mind, it still is a good proxy to whether or not you're actually hitting the proper muscle that you're trying to. And the truth is, there hasn't been anything that has disproven metabolite buildup not leading to hypertrophy. So just in my mind, though, if I'm getting a solid, nasty pump, that means I'm at least hitting the muscle that I need to hit. So let's get into this. There we go. So one, this makes my legs look like chicken legs. I promise they're not that small. But so you'll notice that as I'm doing this, and the reason I'm probably going to switch and maybe do a Smith machine squat instead is because the angle of my hip is changing a little bit more than the angle at my knees. Now, I'm still obviously getting quad flexion as I'm doing this, but just something to note, I'm probably going to end up trying something else. I do have limited ankle mobility in my left ankle because I've broken it twice. So just not something I really want to, push for now. I'm definitely going to be switching to a Smith machine squat, my next training block. But you'll notice here, this was, I believe, a 2 RIR. So only thing to really note is just if you're going to do these, go full depth. I see a ton of people not go deep enough. So at least you'll see here, I'm pretty damn deep. I'm damn near, bottoming out, as you can see over right down here on this. But go deep. And if you have to lighten the load, you got to lighten the load. If your goal is to build muscle, then you really shouldn't care about the overall load on the bar, because at that point, we're just talking ego. So that's the only point I'll make on that. Do full range of motion. And then, if you want to do the partials at the end of your lift or at the end of your set, by all means. But I think, full range of motion for the most part is going to have a lot more benefits for most people. So let's get to the next exercise. So hamstring curls, my favorite. First thing, when, for a long time, I only did RDLs, stiff leg deadlifts, things like that with the hamstrings in the lengthened position, which I get. However, something important to note, if you just let's think anatomy here. The hamstring is known as the biceps femoris, right? Biceps. You know that your actual biceps with your arm, you have to do curls in order to get them to grow. Your hamstrings are the biceps of your legs. This changes nothing. You have to actually curl them if you want that big, meaty, juicy looking, ham at Christmas time, okay? So hamstring curls, if you're not already doing them, do them. And for me personally, I hit hamstrings a couple times a week. This is the only one I do. I'll sometimes do the lying, but for the most part, it's seated, especially if you get a good seated machine like this one, where you're actually going to be able to fully contract. That's always a big bonus. But let's look here. First, what I want to show you is as I'm doing this, you'll notice here in a second, I actually lean forward. Now, why do I do this? It puts me in a more advantageous position to drive more force because I actually have anterior pelvic tilt, which is basically where my hips are a little bit forward whenever I'm standing. So they're kind of the front part of my hip is turned this way. So what this does by leaning up here is, one, rather than leaning back and having unnecessary length in my hamstrings that I already have naturally whenever I'm walking, by wrapping my arms around the little handles here, I'm actually giving myself a better chance of driving more force through the length-tension relationship. Now, real quick, I want to go over what the length-tension relationship is, just for you nerds out there, just so you understand. So if you look at the top, the very top, little diagram here, those little blue pieces are myosin. The little white bars going around it are actin. Now, how these things interact is it's kind of like Velcro, right? So the more that you have on top of each other, the more, force, or the more they're attached, the harder it is to get them, to pull apart, and the harder it is to get them to pull apart, the more stimulus that you're going to drive. However, in the case of the top one, you'll also notice the little orange squiggly lines. Those are called a titin, something like that. But it's basically another part of your muscle that basically forces these things to move apart and then back together. Now, the problem with the first one, if you think about a muscle being fully contracted, there's not a whole lot of room to drive any more force to stimulate muscle growth, and that's just because the titin does not have enough room to actually do something. So think of it like this. If you're going to jump across like an 8-foot ditch, you're not going to start from a standstill and expect to make it across. You're probably going to get a running jump, okay? So if we go to the next one, which this is the optimal length, so this is where everything is going to interact. There's plenty of room for the titin to, do what it needs to do and to get moving, to force the muscle to grow. This is the optimal length. And then the one down below, you'll notice that the actin isn't even, connected or overlapping the myosin, which is kind of the thought process that I'm going through. Rather than leaning and grabbing the handles and pushing my arms all the way back, that's why I'm going a little bit more forward, and wrapping my arms around it, just to give the my hamstrings a better starting position to actually drive more force to generate more output and ultimately more muscular stimulus to actually grow. So do this. Another important thing is make sure on the eccentric on these, ideally, you want to pause at the bottom. You want a peak contraction. You want to control it on the way up, and then as explosive as you can on the way down. Another cue that I like to do is I like to try to think of taking my heels right to my butt. And for me, it's just more of a mind-muscle connection thing. It just makes me feel like I'm actually working the hamstrings more. And you'll notice as I'm approaching failure, we're giving one last go, and then I could not squeeze nearly as much. And then one more, which I used a little bit of body English to get up, but let's see, boom. And that is pretty much, did 2 more reps. So now this is leg press. So you'll notice at the very beginning, I do have a little foam roller here. Why do I have a foam roller here? Well, one, my ankle mobility sucks. So I'm basically using the foam roller to get my hips up into a little bit higher of a position so that I can bias my quads more. So something about leg press, a lot of people will try to bias their glutes and all that fun stuff. But whenever you're trying to bias the quads, the only thing that you have to think about is if you can make the change in the angle of your knee greater than the change of the angle at your hip, you are going to bias the quad more as opposed to glutes. Now, if I wanted to try to bias more glute, I would essentially I would, 1, get rid of the foam roller. 2, I would put my heels as high up as I could on the platform and try to make the angle at my hip change more than the angle at my knee and not let my knee go very far past 90 degrees. So let's get started. So notice here, this was a 1 RIR, I believe, but I'm really trying to almost just touch my chest with my knees here. So this is all quads working. Normally, most people, if your ankle mobility allows you, would go lower on the platform, which is what I would recommend for most people. But if you do have limited ankle mobility, I highly recommend adding the foam roller. So the thing about legs is it's not like too many people, stack up as much weight as they possibly can and then just do partial reps. And although it looks really good on camera and it looks good to other people in the gym, it's not going to stimulate muscle growth. And if you are the type of person that's just like, hey, I just like to put heavy stuff on there, cool. But by the way, this set hurt like a bitch. If you are the type of person that likes to, just put as much weight on the bar or on the machine and just do your, partial reps, then by all means, more power to you. But if your goal is to drive as much muscle growth as you possibly can, then we want to start thinking about full range of motion, try to bring your quads to your chest if you can, maybe even pausing at the bottom, and then going from there. So that is a little recap on leg day. Hopefully some of the tips in there kind of helped you out a little bit, kind of help make things make more sense. But if you do have any questions on it, leave a comment, send me an email, whatever. I've got all my contact information in the description. But until next time, peace.